Hello, welcome back. Thank you very much for welcoming me to your symposium. My name is Tanya Beckett, as previously you were hearing. I'm going to be taking this next session right up to lunchtime, and we're going to have these so-called fire chats, which are very quick fire questions to representatives of airlines and also of Airbus as to how they are dealing with this data problem. We're also going to be talking a little bit about how you get data together. Angela from Southwest is going to talk to us a little bit about that. But clearly there are different types of data, and we need to separate out precisely what it is we're talking about, how this data is collected, and what precisely airlines are willing to share. Well, to get the energy going, I'd like to move on with the rest of the morning first with Dr. John Carney, who is Chief Data Scientist from OpenJaw. He spent most of his career in data engineering and also has a great deal of knowledge about machine learning, which is very important, of course, in this context. Please welcome him.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Tanya, for that warm welcome. And I'm really delighted to be here in beautiful Berlin, and really appreciate the opportunity to meet with all of you and to talk a little bit about machine learning and data science and some of the things we're doing at OpenJaw. So, without big data, you are blind and deaf in the middle of a freeway. So this is a famous quote from Geoffrey Moore, the high-tech marketing guru from Silicon Valley. And although this is a dramatic statement, I do believe this to be true for every single retail business in the world today, and especially travel retailers and airlines running a travel retailing business. But what exactly is big data? You know, we hear that term so often now, and really in many respects it's completely overused and misunderstood and so on. But the challenge in defining it is that big just gets bigger every single year. And this is a theme that we've seen right through every presentation this morning. So here are just some numbers, some background statistics around this growth. So by 2050, we will have 45 zettabytes of data globally stored across 100 billion connected devices. So, this is really amazing, because no longer do we talk about megabytes, terabytes, or even exabytes. We now talk about zettabytes. We need a new unit to essentially capture the sheer volume of data that we see today. And this growth really is being generated by the Internet of Things. So we've all heard that term before, but it's the Internet of Things that's really driving the spectacular growth in global data volumes. And already today, we have over 4.4 zettabytes of data globally. But how big is big? How big is 4.4 zettabytes, or indeed 45 zettabytes? Well, here is a big number. 11 trillion, 250 billion. Okay, so what's this number? Well, if we were to store 45 zettabytes on DVDs, we would need 11 trillion, 250 billion of them. So that's a very, very large number. And just to give you sort of a sense for how big that is, if I were to take each DVD from its box and stack it from here all the way to the moon, I could actually do that 45 times. So it really is a colossal amount of data that we're collecting through the Internet of Things, essentially. But why now? Why is all of this happening now? We weren't having these conversations 5 years ago, and certainly not 10 years ago. Some people were predicting it, but it's actually happening now. So what has changed? Well, essentially we have a convergence. And we have a convergence of these three technologies, essentially. So with the Internet, we now have billions of connections that generate huge quantities of data. So we have photos posted to Facebook, messages on WeChat, sensor data in smart homes. And with cloud computing, we now have a way to process and store this data in a very scalable and essentially low-cost way. And with machine learning, we can now model this data with predictive analytics and insight. So we can make sense of this data and convert it essentially from data to information. So really, when you think about it, these three technologies combined really have the potential to usher in a new industrial revolution. In many respects, you know, what steam power did to physical labor in the 19th century, these three technologies combined will do to cognitive labor in this century. So really, you know, quite a profound change. So this is real. This is happening. So how does all of this relate to airlines, customer centricity, and travel retailing generally? Where is the most valuable data in your airline? Well, I would argue that actually the most valuable data in your airline right now is your customer data. Okay, and I think we've seen this theme right through every presentation this morning. There's amazing things we can do if we manage this data effectively and monetize it effectively. As it happens, the most valuable brands in the world today are also the most customer-centric. Okay, so that's an interesting statistic. These are all household brands that we use every day, and the way they manage their business and the way they manage their relationships with their customers is 100% completely customer-centric. And you can put a number on this. So there was a piece of research done by the Boston Consulting Group a few years ago, and they estimate that customer centricity and personalization will push a revenue shift of 800 billion to the 15% of companies globally that they estimate as getting it, you know, that understand customer centricity. So you can quantify the opportunity here, or in fact the potential loss if you know, if you don't embrace this concept of customer centricity. And customer centricity, you know, delivers specific things. It delivers a lot of things around customer service, as we spoke about, the speaker spoke about this morning, but also in terms of retailing, obviously, it offers huge opportunities. So it delivers increased conversion rates, more effective marketing, increased revenue per trip, improved repurchase rates, and increased satisfaction, loyalty, and advocacy. And that's not just me saying that, that's Boston Consulting Group, and I think a general consensus in the industry now that this is really happening. Now, there is a but in all of this, there is a however, and that is that what we're starting to see in the travel industry is that it's starting to fall behind other industries a little bit. So this is an interesting statistic that was buried in a really nice report, the 2017 Bond Loyalty Report, which reported that 25% of customers surveyed in 2017 felt very satisfied with the level of personalization they experience day to day as they travel. But when they repeated that survey, when they looked at what it was in 2016, it was actually 28%. So there's a downward trend in overall satisfaction levels. And this is a trend that kind of repeats itself. We're starting to see it in multiple places across the industry. So it's a little bit concerning, a little bit worrying. But why is this happening? You know, it's happening for a lot of complex, kind of subtle reasons. But more than anything, what we're seeing is a change in consumer behavior, and in particular, a change in consumer expectations. And unfortunately, it's these guys here that are changing this kind of change in expectations, really. When you look at what these companies actually do, they all offer their end users highly personalized, customer-centric experiences, fully integrated across all of their services. So this is the bar by which we're all measured now in every business that operates in the retail sector. So I guess the message here is that building a customer-centered capability at your airline has never been so important. The time really is now. But if you've tried to do this, or you've started on this journey, you know that this is actually really quite difficult to do. And the reason it's difficult to do is you need essentially at least these four technical kind of assets. or capabilities to get yourself started and to have a real customer-centric capability. So the first thing you need is a big data store, or some people call it a big data lake. And this is essentially a place where you pull all of your data, your structured data and your unstructured data around your customers into one place. So unstructured data would include things like online intent information. So this is the tagging information that you associate to all of your front-end assets, your retailing assets that track the behavior of your consumers online and their intent as expressed through searches and so on. The next piece of information is unstructured as well. So this is psychographics. Now, with GDPR and all of the progress that's been made in data privacy regulations, this is becoming much more difficult to do for very good reason. But nonetheless, it is possible to do if you have a capability such as log in with Facebook or log in with Google. And through something like log in with Facebook on your retailing site, you can actually access through the Facebook APIs customer psychographic information on the Facebook network, including things like their likes. Okay. However, you can only access that if they give consent for that to be provided. So it's more difficult to access this information today for good reasons, but it's still completely possible depending on how you work with your social media partners. The next three sets of data are extremely important, and this is your structured data pertaining to customer information, really. So you have your super P&Rs, and your super P&Rs really are the passenger name record information across the full umbrella of products that you sell. So, you know, flight information, hotel information, car information, and so on. And your typical e-commerce platform would generate that sort of information, your booking information, essentially. Such as the platform that we have at OpenJaw. The next is your PSS P&R information. So this is the information that comes out of the GDSs that you all work with, the Amadeuses and the Sabres of the world. And obviously this has very important structured information about customers' buying preferences and history as well. And then finally, the loyalty profiles are extremely important. So these tell us things about, you know, the financial buying preferences and history across, you know, a customer's lifetime. So that's the first thing you need to do, is to pull that data together into one place. But as soon as you do that, you'll realize that you'll need an identity resolution solution, because all of these data sources identify customers in different ways. So, you know, what a PSS P&R record identifies a customer with will be quite different to, you know, what Facebook uses, or what your super P&R system uses, or your loyalty profile system uses. So, unfortunately, it's a big technical problem to solve, but it can be solved with modern identity resolution solutions that essentially use a probabilistic model to match customers as the same person or not, as opposed to an exact matching model. So that deserves a whole separate presentation, so I won't dwell on it. Suffice to say, it's a tricky problem that has to be solved as you move towards customer centricity. The next piece is data science. So obviously, you know, so far I've just talked about data, and data is just data. It's scattered, not necessarily integrated, and not of much monetary value until you apply some analytics to it, some data science to it. So that's a very important piece of the puzzle. And then finally, something that's, you know, quite overlooked, but nonetheless extremely important in terms of pushing this data out to your business processes, is some data distribution capability in the form of APIs. So most good big data platforms today will have this capability where the data is consumable via standardized APIs so that downstream systems and processes can use it. So when you combine all of these things together, you end up with analytics. Analytics you can monetize. So you've moved from data essentially to information. So this framework actually is a convenience, is a handy way to look at this in the context of analytics. So you know, we've moved from data to information with analytics, but there's lots of different types of analytics. you can apply to your data. So this framework actually is based on the Gartner Analytics framework, and it's quite a useful tool, conceptual tool, just to kind of get your head around essentially a roadmap to customer centricity at your airline. So at the bottom we have difficulty, and on the y-axis we have monetization opportunity. So the more complex and involved your analytics become, the higher the monetization opportunity. So I'll just dwell on each one of these and talk about some examples, just to kind of crystallize some of the concepts here. So descriptive analytics essentially refers to any data analysis that focuses on past behaviors or historical patterns. So it's effectively hindsight. It's pretty straightforward, effectively hindsight. And the existing business intelligence tools that you probably all use essentially use this, this principle. But descriptive analytics, nonetheless, can be quite complex. They can do pretty sophisticated things. So this is an example of a use case where machine learning is used to essentially segment customers based on the profile of trips that they take. So it's looking at 4 dimensions, and the text is very small here. Travel day of the week, passenger mix, booking lead time, and stay duration. And with those 4 dimensions captured for every single customer, the machine learning algorithm can infer which customers, which segment of customers are taking business trips versus weekend breaks versus school holidays versus annual holidays. And again, this is not done by people actually trying to manually segment these customers. It's actually done by the machine learning algorithm itself that across a full customer base for an airline found 4 clusters that followed these 4 patterns. And obviously, there's lots of application for this sort of data. An obvious one is, this was actually done for a low-cost airline that didn't have business class, but they were very curious to understand how they could sell high-value ancillaries to their business travelers. So who were their business travelers? Well, this algorithm can very quickly identify who they are. And obviously, for promotions and campaigns as well, it's very useful to know which customers are using your airline for these different types of activities. So that's descriptive analytics, one of the simpler forms of analytics. The next then is predictive analytics, and this refers to any form of analytics or analysis that uses mathematical models to predict future patterns or behaviors. So in that respect, it's like foresight. So this is an example. And this is just the tip of the iceberg of the sorts of things that we're starting to see now in the world of predictive analytics for travel. So this allows you essentially to segment customers by their propensity to purchase either specific travel products or categories of products. So in this case, there's a series of propensity models. And these propensity models predict for every single customer at the individual customer level which customers are likely to purchase city centre destinations, beach destinations, countryside destinations, and different values of hotels. So obviously from this you can see that you can start to craft these precision marketing campaigns with these micro segments of customers in a very effective way and really monetize your data. And also improve the customer experience. Remember, you're rendering offers to these customers that they actually want to see, not offers that are frustrating them as noise. And then finally, we have prescriptive analytics, and this is really at the cutting edge because what you're doing is you're taking the descriptive analytics and the predictive analytics and you're pushing those into an automated business process. So in many respects, represents the final frontier of analytics. And the best way really to understand prescriptive analytics, I think, is in terms of the customer journey. So this is something that we use at OpenJaw. It's a simplified version of the journey, but it captures the 8 key phases across the journey that we continually see with our customers. And really, the ones in red here, the phases in red, represent the first wallet, we say. This is the booking process from inspiration all the way to booking. And then the yellow ones represent the second wallet. So somebody's in trip and there's servicing to be concerned with, there's in transit to be concerned with, and then of course eventually the customer gets home. So What we really are moving towards, I think, is a scenario where an optimal next best action is generated for each step of the customer journey as the customer journey moves along. And in order to enable that, really, what you need are these really quite sophisticated descriptive and predictive analytics that tell you a lot of deep information about the preferences of individual customers. And with that information at each step of the journey, you can start to see an optimal next best action being rendered. So if they're at the inspiration and dreaming phase, you'll see, a highly targeted specific Facebook dynamic ad for travel, for example. When they land on your website, you'll see a highly personalized landing page, relevant to their specific interests and their specific propensities and age profile and demographic. And then, of course, you'll see highly personalized offers and upsell opportunities based on their profile, their preferences, their propensity, and so on. So we're doing two things with this, of course. We're monetizing our customer data, but we're also really improving the experience for the customer. We're giving them highly relevant offers, and we're engaging with them in a very personalized way, which is exactly what the Netflix of the world do, the Amazons of the world do, and all of those companies that we're chasing to catch up with. And then finally, once they're in this second wallet phase and they're on their trip, there's lots of things that can happen there. For us, we're very interested to look at messaging and chatbots in particular as a mechanism to interact with a customer while they're in trip. The whole dynamic is quite different. When people are in trip, they're on their mobile. Their purchasing behaviors are much more inspirationally led rather than sort of, logical. They're not sitting at their PC. So something like a chatbot represents an interesting opportunity to really start to engage with the customer effectively during this kind of second wallet phase. So if you take your standard chatbot, so we have one as well at OpenJaw. But if you take that standard chatbot, which is supported through Facebook Messenger or WeChat or whatever your platform is, and you start to enhance the intelligence of the interactions with that chatbot with data, with customer data, with propensity, and so on, you can start to deliver relevant context-aware offers and conversations, which improve, loyalty, which improve customer service, but also enables you to access that second wallet from a conversion standpoint. So this is just a simple example, and I'll just have to walk over here so I can read it. This is somebody who has traveled to Barcelona, and what they'd like to do is book a restaurant in the Ramblas region for this evening. And because the chatbot knows who this person is and their particular preferences in terms of where they like to eat, where their hotel is, and the sort of food they prefer, you can actually recommend a restaurant that very quickly satisfies the request and also converts from an upsell, cross-sell perspective. So just to sort of wrap up then, I suppose really what I'm trying to communicate here is a roadmap. So what would be the roadmap to deliver customer centricity at your airline? If you were to look through Airlines or the lens of a data scientist, let's say, like myself, it would look something like this. I mean, there's really 4 key steps, and this applies generally. I think this applies generally across every industry. So the first step is to build your big data lake capability. And I think, again, in some of the presentations this morning, we saw this as a theme. It was called different, there were different names, but essentially the same thing. And this is where you pull all of your data into one place and you integrate it and you perform identity resolution, essentially. The next step really is to convert your data to information with analytics. So data is just data. You really need analytics if you want to monetize that data. And then finally, you need to embed these insights coming from your predictive and descriptive analytics into your business processes to transform how you interact with your customers and with that really become a customer-centric airline. So that's really it from me. If you're interested in some of the stuff we do and how we see big data at OpenJaw, we'll be delighted to speak to anyone. We have a stand outside, and then obviously I'm here for the full week, and the team is as well. So thank you. Pleasure to have the opportunity to speak to you.